The Nature of True Prayer by F.L. Rawson. Chapter 7, Signs of the Final Troubles. Preliminary Signs of the Final Troubles. Shortly before writing this, I had a letter from Minnesota in which the writer says, "I am of the opinion that all matter will be destroyed through fire, which I think is the only way a proper purification of all into spirit can take place. Am I right?" The writer would be correct about matter being destroyed by fire at the end of the world if there were no such thing as true prayer. This destruction by fire is shown in numerous places in the Bible. Almost all the prophetical books refer to it, and it is also shown that by true prayer, the horrors therefrom will be reduced. Jesus said, "Except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." Matthew 24:22. Isaiah 26:3 shows that those who know how to pray by the realization of God will have no trouble. He says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." Daniel shows deliverance in chapter 12:1 and also shows how God's people, those who understand how to be in communion with God, will be delivered, namely by the denial. He has just concluded the prophecy, which shows the end of Napoleon, and owing to history repeating itself, of the ex-Kaiser of Germany, as follows: "He shall come to his end, and none shall help him." Then he continues, "And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was, since there was a nation, even to that same time, and at that time thy people shall be delivered." Michael is the denial of the existence of the evil in heaven. Gabriel is the affirmation or dwelling upon the perfection of the opposite. Since the 4th edition of The Nature of True Prayer, I have started a monthly paper called the Weekly Lessons and Bulletin, in which I give, firstly, a statement of the trouble attacking the world which requires to be worked against by prayer. Secondly, a lesson for senior students which at present consists of details of the Bible prophecies of the troubles which are coming at the end of the world, the fulfillment thereof, and the scientific explanation of how they are coming about. Thirdly, a graduated course of lessons for junior students, commencing with ordinary psychology and consisting of 24 lessons extending over 2 years, at the end of which time I will probably be giving them the highest I am capable of giving. I also give details of any troubles in our centers throughout the world which require to be overcome, as a rule, asking the workers in 2 adjacent towns to take up and pray against the difficulties. Evil cannot bring about good. Many think these troubles are turning men to God in the way that the Great War is said by some to have done in Europe. This is not correct, as evil cannot bring about good. As these troubles increase, so will men more and more turn in thought to God with increasing joy and thankfulness, finding this is the only certain method of overcoming their difficulties. It is believed by many that evil is, therefore, a good thing because it turns men to God. This is not the case. It is far better that a man should turn to God without having the evil. The nature of evil, however, is self-destructive. Evil always destroys itself if given time. Every form of sin ultimately so punishes the sinner that he gives it up. Some thinkers say it is the false idea of pleasure through sin which tempts the sinner. This is not really so. It is the thoughts that act on man which cause him to sin. Thought after thought comes, giving the desire, and then, at last, sad to say, strong enough thoughts come which cause him to sin. Sin gives no pleasure. When a man knows more, he finds that sin gives no pleasure whatsoever, and so he does his very best to give up sinning. All the happiness there is in sin, he can obtain without it. Sin only reduces the happiness. Pleasure comes through thoughts acting upon the mind right in this respect and is irrespective of the sin. Sometimes thoughts of sin and happiness come at the same time, sometimes they do not. In the cinematographic pictures to which I have earlier compared material man in the material world, as far as I am aware, you never get sin without subsequent evil thoughts attacking the sinner, apparently due to the sin, but not really so, for there is no cause and effect in the material world. The evil which overtakes the wrongdoer is in the cinematographic pictures following after the sin. If there were cause and effect in the material world, the sinner would be bound to get the punishment after the sin, but if a man treats, he can overcome the punishment for his sin. Every time he overcomes the punishment, he is less likely to sin in the future. The difficulty is that the feeling of the justice of the punishment makes it difficult for him to treat and get right away from all thought of the material world, either past or present. If he could, the punishment would cease and ultimately the sin would cease. One of the proofs of the above is that if a man is in the habit of going to a public house and obtaining pleasure from intoxication, and seeing him about to enter, you treat so that the desire goes and he does not enter, you will find that he will lose none of the pleasure that he would have derived from the drinking. It is true that he will give you some material reason why he appeared to have had happiness. It may merely be from the feeling that he had been able to refrain from his vicious habit. You can destroy the evil, but you cannot in any way destroy the good, and therefore, whilst the desire for drink goes, the pleasure remains, and the latter being caused by the thoughts of happiness acting upon a mind that is fortunately in the condition to respond to them. Sin, always followed by punishment. Man ultimately finds that sin is always followed by punishment, and the only way in which he can prevent this punishment is by true prayer. It is not right that a man should be punished when he sins because he never made his so-called mind, and he never made the thoughts that attack him. Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Psalms 51:5. It is one of the many proofs that this material world is hell. At the same time, the punishment appears to deter many from sinning, although, as a matter of fact, it does not. Ignorance brings just as much punishment in many cases as sin does. The punishment is caused by evil thoughts attacking the mind, and when a man knows how to pray, he can destroy these evil thoughts and free himself from the punishment. When he does this, he is less liable to trouble in the future as his so-called mind is improved. Then, neither the sinful thoughts nor the thoughts causing the punishment have quite the same effect. One of the best realizations wherewith to avoid the punishment is that it never happened. Man is spiritual and divine. One should never allow oneself to dwell, even for a moment, on the occasion when the sinful thoughts overcame one. Remember, it is not you who sin. It is merely the evil thoughts which play upon an apparent you that cause the effect of a man appearing to sin. By refusing to dwell upon the apparent sin and dwelling instead upon the perfection of the world of reality, you destroy the evil thoughts that tempt you and, what is of more importance, gradually change your mind so that no sinful thoughts can touch you and you are permanently free. Esdras pointed this out in his account of the end of the world. He wrote, "Let not your sins weigh you down, and let not your iniquities lift up themselves. Woe be unto them that are bound with their sins." 2 Esdras 16:76-77. Forgiveness of sins. When a man sins, it is not his fault. It is his misfortune. And this is why we have not to punish the sinner. Sin metes out its own punishment, and if a man is doing evil, we have to forgive in the only true way, namely, by the destruction of the thoughts attacking him and the purification of his mind. This we do by destroying all thoughts of the evil in our own mind and knowing the allness of God. Good. There is no sinner, only our false concept of God's man. If we reverse our thoughts properly, he will never sin again, and this is the only true forgiveness. The witness who accepts the false evidence and continues thinking that the man is sinning is participating in the sin and gets punished. Let none of you imagine evil in your hearts against his neighbor. Zechariah 8:17. It is the business of those who know how to think rightly to protect such a man from the consequences of evil, as it is not, as has been said, his fault, but his misfortune. For as St. Paul says, therefore, thou art inexcusable, O man, whosoever thou art that judgest, for wherein thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself. Romans 2:1. That was chapter 7, Signs of the Final Troubles. Join us next time for chapter 8, Spiritual Realities of the Body. See you then.